just to emphasize how little impact this will have militarily, these ATACMS missiles, is we just think about Ukraine has been firing ATACMS into Crimea, into the Donbass for years. They've been trying to take out the Crimea bridge. That's something that they've been touting forever. And they fire ATACMS out at it all the time, or they used to until they ran out. But they never, they never took it down. We saw time and time again. They fire volleys, and Russia knocks down all these ATACMS. And you're talking about the world's largest country in the world. Right. That has perhaps the largest missile arsenal in the world, as well the most nuclear weapons in the world,
and the best air defense system in the world,
and the best air defense system in the world. And you look at Ukraine. Ukraine has virtually no air defense systems now. Russia's knocked them all out, and despite that, and Russia regularly hits Ukraine with missiles and drones, and they're still standing after over 2 years. Yeah. And they're hitting them with hypersonic, high-powered missiles, hitting their energy infrastructure, which is badly crippled now, but they still have the lights on. And this is after years of hitting a country with much more advanced missiles, more powerful missiles, against a country that has no air defense systems whatsoever. And so you think that somehow giving them a handful of ATACMS and hitting the largest country in the world is going to change the outcome of this war? That's absurd. I don't think anybody in the right mind thinks that. Just a few people that haven't thought about this closely at all, and just think that
and unfortunately, which is the majority of Western politicians. But those that are well informed, the very small minority that are well informed, know that this will not make a difference. And the military, experts, they know that, and they've gone out and said it. They said it again. This will not make a difference.
Right?
So why? All you're doing is it's like it's completely, useless provocation. I mean, that's all it is. It has no military significance whatsoever, but it is an obvious provocation that Russia will have to respond to if, in fact, a missile does get through.
I feel like Western politicians have to know. People like Macron and stuff. I mean, because
Macron
they've been
probably, but I'm not sure. I'm sure they've heard things, but they seem to so fervently believe, in the Western delusion, the Western narrative, that I'm sure they eventually, they occasionally hear things from advisors, but they just don't believe it. I think I really don't think so. I don't think a lot of them, they seem very sincere and very worked up about these things. Some of them are quite like the Lithuanian, prime minister was just ecstatic about this move. I mean, he was really, really happy. He really believes it's going to make a difference, and Putin's going to be is going to be hiding in his bunker because of this, and then his regime will fall.
Yeah, well, these small Baltic countries, they're just insane. They're just relying on what they perceive to be their great and powerful friends.
Well, I don't think the UK is any less insane. I'm serious. I mean, the UK defense minister, foreign minister, prime minister, they're just as nutty. They really are. And, they must have heard the facts, but they just don't, it just hasn't gotten through to them. They just don't, I think it's just like the narrative has such power in their brains that it just pushes out all of reality.
Yeah. That and the crappy food and weather, I think, they can't think straight. But the UK and France have, at least this is what I'm hearing, is that they are approving Storm Shadow and Scout missiles as well. So they're just going
that was
straight
actually
all on board.
Yeah, that was in fact retracted. Well, it's interesting, again, similar to the situation with ATACMS. Just a couple days ago, it was the British announced that they didn't have any more Storm Shadows to give. They completely depleted their stockpile. Then this report that you mentioned, came out that the French and the British were going to supply Storm Shadows and Scalps, which are basically the same thing. But maybe like 6 hours later, that was retracted. And I think it was, I can't remember the news service, but the news service actually deleted the story. And so as things stand, they have not lifted the restrictions on Storm Shadows and Scalps.
Okay, so, this isn't going to have an impact on the war. It seems clear then that the only play there's, to trying to Trump-proof it, like you said. And the other one is, I think they're trying to provoke a reaction from Putin, because they know that Putin, like you said, the Russians often don't give red lines, but they have painted a clear red line with long-range missiles.
Right.
Right. They said that if these long-range missiles strike into Russia, that means that it's NATO attacking Russia. We don't view it as Ukraine because we know that it requires NATO technicians and NATO intel to input the coordinates, to do the target selecting, and to input it, operate it. It's NATO. You might have a Ukrainian push the button at the end, but they know that this is a NATO attack. So they said they will view this as an attack from NATO and respond accordingly. So this seems to be a test. Like, okay, we know that this was a red line. This was a red line that was painted very clearly, and it seemed like it held firm. We saw Keir Starmer and Blinken go to the White House together, try to convince Biden. Seems like the Pentagon put its foot down and also said that, this isn't going to have an outcome on the battlefield anyways. This is ridiculous. We got to respect this red line. And now we're just Biden, if this is true, which it sounds like it, Biden is blatantly crossing this red line to try to escalate the situation so that why? Just because he's a bitter old man and he just hates Trump and he wants to give Trump a conflict that's hotter than ever?
I guess so. I mean, it's just, I think the theory is that, by escalating the conflict, it'll just be more difficult for Trump to end the conflict, to move, pull out of it. That, in fact, that argument really doesn't even make sense to me, because you think about it, it would actually be very easy. In fact, like people in the Trump administration have already condemned this move, including his son, Donald Trump Jr. has said that this is a move towards World War III. We won't stand for this. So, they made it clear this is not something we approve of. And when he takes office, he could simply, rescind the order. And I think it would be very easy and painless for him to do. So I think it's a desperation move, on the part of the Biden administration.
Do you think there's a good chance that Russia will not escalate, react, and say that you really crossed a red line? Because what if Trump picks up the phone and calls Putin and says, like, look, I'm the president-elect. You know that I don't approve this.
Right.
We've publicly condemned it. It's not going to happen. As soon as I get in, this nonsense is over. I'm sorry that Biden's being a lunatic and just going crazy in his last 2 months. And Putin, you think, could be rational and be like, okay. And that would actually be a great start to the...
I agree. So I think that's quite possible. I was thinking the same thing. And if, in fact, Trump notifies Putin ahead, before the inauguration, that he is going to, he fully intends to rescind this order. I think that even if there was some sort of significant strike into Russian territory, the Russians would just hold off, they would just wait and see. And if, in fact, when, if the Trump administration makes good on its promise, then they will not retaliate. I think that would happen. So I think there's reason to be quite hopeful about it. There's a lot of, alarmist comment, World War III is around the corner. It is risky. It is stupid. It's just more stupid than anything. But I think that, again, it's just like there's even a question that if any of these attackers are going to get through and do anything. And then the Trump administration has already made clear that they do not approve of this. So I think it won't go anywhere. I think you're right.
Okay, I hope so. Because the other outcome is that you said, Putin is very serious about these long-range missiles. That this is something that...
I think it's clear he is very serious about it.
Right, and that this could be a real flare-up if it happens. And I'm kind of that camp as well, that Putin won't give a knee-jerk reaction and just start bombing NATO troops or something.
Well, if let's say if Trump fails to rescind the order, then I think he would retaliate. Or if they continue firing attacks after Trump assumes office, then everything's different. But I think you're right that probably Putin will wait and see if there is a change. It would be he's a very cautious, very rational man. He's not going to lash out. He's going to he's thinking about Russian interests too. And if there's any possibility of improving relations with the future administration, yeah, he'll pursue that possibility.
Well, something that you said that was that you think Russia could do if this happened was that they would give ship-killing missiles to the Houthis, like that, and then that they wouldn't hesitate to do that if there were long-range missiles going into Russia. Do you still think that's on the table there, or do you think that?
I think that I've heard that the Russian. I don't know where this information came from, but there was some sort of indication that the Russians had already hinted that this might be their response. And then it was just the other day that the Pentagon official was some kind of naval commander was expressing his amazement at the sophistication of Houthi missiles. He says they're becoming more sophisticated. So that suggests that, it could be the Iranians, but it could also be the Russians that are supplying them with more sophisticated missiles. There clearly is a willingness on the part of either Iran or Russia to do that already. And it's also, there have been rumors that the Russians have been providing the Houthis with satellite data.
I was going to that was going to be my question, is that, I've been hearing about how these Houthi missiles are getting increasingly more sophisticated and are really shocking the U.S. Navy and their capabilities. But these precision missiles require satellite data, right? They require some advanced stuff that clearly the Houthis don't have. And I don't sure if it's coming from Russia or Iran. And then we're starting to see these conflicts, potentially merge. If that's the case, at what point is, are the Houthis now a proxy of not only Iran, but also Russia, if Russia is giving them...
Well, that's the point. It's just, okay, you're going to, NATO, you're going to use Ukraine as a proxy against us to attack us directly. Okay, well, then we're just going to use the Houthis as a proxy against you. It's just tit for tat.
Do you think that would be...
You can see the logic there,
Right, but the problem is it seems like the American, or at least the American military machine, doesn't see logic.
No. I think the American military does, and they're aware of the threat. That's why it's been the Pentagon all along that's been pushing back on this. Yeah, don't do it, because they understand that they could be humiliated in the Red Sea. If Russia gives ship-killing missiles to the Houthis, well, they're going to kill a ship.
Right, but
and that's a humiliation. The U.S. Navy does not want that to happen.
Okay, I would say
why do this in Ukraine where there's no benefit and we could be humiliated in the Red Sea? I think it's just the logic is crystal clear. The U.S. military grasps this completely, and that's why they push back so hard.
Okay, I kind of misphrased it. I didn't mean necessarily the Pentagon itself. I meant more the military-industrial complex, the warmongers, the Black Rocks, the politicians, the people lying in their pockets. They want war. It's like, I think they would be happy to see a ship go down, because then it's like, that's what they want. Then it's an excuse, like, now it's all out war against Iran or against Russia, whoever it is, that now we got to go on. Because we know those neocons are in power. They're part of this this machine, and that's what they're gunning for. It's just the same thing like we were talking about a while ago. So I was asking if Netanyahu would be happy if the Iranians killed more Israelis in the strike.
I think you're right. I think there's no question there are people who are hoping for an incident like this. It would be like a 9/11 that they could seize on, and it would be causus belli, an excuse for war.
To me, that's why the lifting these restrictions came from. It's not really so much from Biden. Biden probably doesn't really know too much. He probably maybe wants to do it a little bit, but he's in his last 2 months. But there are people around him that are wanting an all-out war. They want to destroy Russia. Yeah. So they were able to convince him and talk to him, and their hope.
Right, and I think they used it, apparently, according to the New York Times report, that he was convinced by the North Korean argument, which I pointed out, even if it were true, does not make a lick of sense. Actually, it's the opposite, because now you're also, NATO's also attacking North Korea.
Right.
These fictional, there's probably no way to convince Biden at this point that there aren't North Korean super soldiers in Kursk right now. Yeah.
Right.
And so, he feels like he's got to do something about it.
They're probably just drawing like comic books with North Koreans coming in and
handing a
it
little
to
comic.
Biden, like, look at this, man, they're coming in, before I know it, they're going to be walking down, Times Square and going into your local Walmart, so we got to stop them now. But it seems like the people that are feeding Biden the comic books or whatever, feeding him this North Korean story, getting it, they want Russia to strike back, to retaliate, to escalate, because they want to escalate the war.
Yeah,
that's what
right.
it is.
Well, they do. Yeah, just like Netanyahu wants to draw the U.S. into a regional war in the Middle East. Those same hawks are the Russia hawks and the Ukrainians want to draw the U.S. into, or I guess more accurately, NATO into a direct war against Russia. They want NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine, and they see this as the first step. I think the Ukrainians understand very well this is not going to help them, but it could create an incident that lead to escalation. They could lead to a severe Russian response, which could be the excuse for sending NATO troops into Ukraine. That's their hope. I mean, that's what his victory plan was all about. That's his World War III plan.
Right. And anybody celebrating this on Twitter or online, I mean, that's what you're celebrating, is that you're hoping that World War III starts. That's what camp you're on. This is clearly just escalation for the sake of escalation. And
zero benefit.
Right. It'll be interesting to see what they do target, because if it requires NATO targeting, NATO position, then that means whatever target they do hit, if they strike a nuclear power plant, if they hit some civilian infrastructure, if they do hit a oil refinery or something like this, we'll know that that's actually NATO that approved that target, that selected that target. So we'll see what they're trying to do. Is it really, are they going after military infrastructure or bases, or are they, what's the plan? So we'll see. And then I think that will obviously have an effect on Putin's calculation. But I think we might see both. There's kind of two things that we painted, that Putin will wait until Biden's gone and Trump's in office and see if he rescinds that order and brings the war to an end. Or that Putin...
Well, not the war to an end, but de-escalates.
But de-escalation, right. Begin the process of cooling down. And then the other option is that Putin will say, well, okay, this is a red line, and our word means something. We gave this line, so we have to back it up. Despite whether or not this is an infirm, lame duck president, this is NATO now attacking Russia. And we said that we have to do something about this, and that we will send missiles to the Houthis. And then this is where it could get a little bit scary, because then if the Houthis do sink a U.S. naval vessel, for example, and they can trace that the missile back to Russia, back to you saying that it's their intelligence, that's where things can really heat up and say that Russia sunk our ship. And now, the calls for war, the war drums start to be beat louder and louder. Do you think... What do you think is likely? Do you think that nothing will happen and we'll hold off
I think. Well, I mean, if the Trump administration, notifies the Russian government ahead of time, before the inauguration, that hey, we don't approve this, we're going to rescind this order, I think it's very, very unlikely that Russia would retaliate. That just does not seem like Putin to me. I mean, he's always looking for a way to cool things down. But if the Trump doesn't do this, or he fails to keep his promise, then I think we can see ship killing missiles in Yemen.
Okay, so hopefully then this is just a lot of drama, and in some ways it could be good. It could show that we're serious, that that Trump is serious, that we don't want this, NATO doesn't want this. It's actually just a really bad look on Biden and the deep state in general. It's like, really, come on, man, you just hang up the gloves, dude. It's
just pathetic.
Over.
It's obviously an act of desperation. One other thing I wanted to point out is that, not only are there very few ATACMS missiles available for Ukraine, there are also very few launchers that, especially during this Kursk operation, the Russians have destroyed a number of their HIMARS launchers, which are actually also used for the ATACMS. The same launchers are used for both missiles. And just yesterday, another ATACMS launcher was destroyed. So, not only do they have very few missiles, they have very few launchers. And if they're going to actually strike fairly deep into Russia, they have to bring the launchers very close to the border. And they, once again, the launcher becomes quite vulnerable. And the Russians have shown great skill at locating and destroying them. So again, I think it's quite, even if the Ukrainians try with NATO help to fire these ATACMS into Russia, I think it's very possible that not a single one will get through.
Right. It might actually expedite, the Ukrainian laws.
Right.
They have to bring things
just
closer
like
to
the
the front.
Kursk operation in general has. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We just have idiots in charge. It's just there's no. Yeah. I just don't understand.
Well, I think they're floundering. It's just as we said. The plan A failed, and they don't have a plan B, so they're just kind of doubling down on a failing plan, and it's just that's what we're seeing right now.
Right. I mean, Plan B should clearly be diplomacy, should be negotiations, but
right.
It just seems like they've taken that off the table. I mean, Ukraine, Zelensky has made it illegal to have
right.
negotiations with Putin anyway, so we will see.